There is a sacred hour before the world awakens. They wake up rushing, already behind, already drowning in the same chaos they swore they'd escape. But those who rise before the sun, they live differently. They walk with intention. They meet their mind before the world does. In those still moments, when the stars begin to fade and the sky turns gold, the successful do not scroll or snooze. They build empires of thought. They sharpen the spirit. They step into each day as if it were a sacred mission, because it is. This isn't about morning routines or coffee rituals. This is about the spiritual discipline of owning your day before the world takes it from you. There's a moment, just before dawn, when the world holds its breath. The streets are silent, the air is cold, the darkness hasn't yet surrendered to the light. And it's in that fragile stillness that life separates the watchers from the warriors. You know this hour, you've felt it before. That faint hesitation when the alarm whispers and your body begs for 5 more minutes of mercy. That tug of comfort, that quiet voice that says, "Not yet," just a little longer, and in that small, ordinary moment a battle begins. You might not see it, you might not hear it, but it's there, a war for control over your own life. You see, most people don't lose because they never had opportunities. They lose because they surrendered their mornings, their most powerful unguarded time. To weakness, they traded discipline for delay, fire for comfort, ownership for excuses. But those who rise before the sun, they live by a different rhythm. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They move before the world demands it. They build while others dream. They lead before they are asked to. When you wake before the world does, you are not just getting up early. You are declaring to life itself, "I am in charge now," because make no mistake, ownership doesn't begin with success, money, or recognition. It begins with one simple act, taking back your time. The hour before dawn is not just a habit, it's a statement of power. It's the hour where you meet yourself before the world interrupts. No messages, no noise, no chaos, just you, raw, unfiltered, and responsible for what happens next. You'll find that at this hour, everything is exposed. The noise in your head, the fear that hides behind your confidence, the truth you avoid in daylight. It all surfaces when the world is asleep, and that's exactly why most people run from it. But if you can sit in that silence, if you can face the discomfort of your own thoughts, you'll begin to understand something sacred. You are not meant to find control. You are meant to build it. And it's built one morning at a time. The greatest lie comfort ever told you is that you can wait for the right time to begin. There is no right time. There is only this time before the sun, before the noise, before the world pulls you apart. If you want ownership of your life, start here. Start in the hour that demands nothing from you except your presence. When you wake early, you meet the version of yourself that still remembers what you wanted before life convinced you to settle. You reconnect with the hunger that routine buried. You remember that you are not a machine. You are a force meant to create, to lead, to conquer the day before the day conquers you. But understand this, ownership isn't glamorous. It's not a picture-perfect morning with sunlight and serenity. Sometimes it's war. Sometimes it's dragging yourself out of bed when every cell in your body screams no. Sometimes it's standing in the dark with nothing but your breath and a stubborn will to rise. And that's what makes it powerful. Because when you choose discipline over comfort, you're not just getting up, you're rewriting who you are. You're proving that you can trust yourself, that your word means something, that your mind no longer bows to weakness. Every time you rise before dawn, you are telling your old self, the one that settled, delayed, and doubted, that their time is over. You start realizing that life will never hand you control. You must seize it. No one is coming to save you from your distractions, your fatigue, or your excuses. This hour is where you stop asking for permission and start taking responsibility. You begin to notice something shift. You walk differently, you speak differently, you think differently, because you've touched something most people will never know, the power of owning your life at its roots. When you rise before the sun, you start the day as the cause, not the effect. You decide what happens next instead of reacting to it. You build momentum before the world even begins to move. And the beauty of this discipline is that it ripples. It spills into everything. your focus, your energy, your choices. You start to feel it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you deal with problems. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming the architect of your own destiny. But let me be honest, this ownership is not easy. It will demand everything from you. It will test you when no one's watching. It will force you to face your weakest self in the mirror every morning. And that's why so few ever reach it. Yet those who do, they become unstoppable. Because when you learn to own your morning, you learn to own your life. You realize that control is not given. It is earned every single day in the hours no one sees. The world only witnesses the results. It never sees the early hours, the quiet wars, the lonely mornings where you forged your strength. But you'll know, and that knowledge becomes your edge. You'll walk through the day with a calm that others mistake for luck. You'll move with a confidence that can't be faked, because you've earned it when no one was watching. You'll understand something sacred. That true freedom is not doing what you want. It's mastering yourself enough to do what you must. And that mastery begins here, in the hour before the sun claims the sky. So tomorrow, when the alarm whispers, when the bed calls your name, when your comfort tries to pull you back into sleep, remember this. You are not just waking up early. You are reclaiming your life one morning at a time. Because ownership doesn't happen when life is convenient. It happens when you choose to rise in the dark and move toward the light, not because it's easy, but because it's yours to claim. There is a kind of silence the world no longer understands. It's not the silence of an empty room or the quiet after a storm. It's the silence that lives before creation, the one that exists between who you are and who you could become. Most people run from it. They fill their mornings with noise, messages, music, news, chatter, anything to avoid that confrontation with themselves. Because in the quiet there is nowhere to hide. No excuses, no masks, no performance. Just you standing face to face with your own truth. But when you sit in the stillness before dawn, when the world hasn't yet remembered your name, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise fades. The layers fall. The constant pretending dissolves. And what's left is you. The raw, unfiltered, inconvenient truth of you. It's not always gentle. Silence rarely is. Because silence doesn't comfort, it reveals. It brings up what you've buried. It holds a mirror to the corners of your mind you've tried to ignore. It reminds you of promises you broke, dreams you postponed, and strength you forgot you had. And yet, that is where transformation begins. The world will tell you that success comes from doing, from grinding, from endless movement, but that's only half the truth. The other half, the deeper, quieter half, comes from listening, from learning to hear the faint, powerful voice beneath all the noise, the one that's been whispering to you all along. In silence, that voice grows louder. It's not the voice of fear, not the voice of doubt. It's the voice that calls you back to yourself, the one that says, "You are not done yet." Most people never meet that voice because they're too busy drowning it out. They fear the quiet because it exposes the gap between who they are and who they said they'd be. But if you have the courage to sit in it, to truly listen, you begin to bridge that gap. In the early hours, the silence becomes your teacher. It teaches you where your mind wanders when there's nowhere to run. It teaches you what you truly value when no one is watching. It teaches you how to be with yourself, not the version you show the world, but the one that aches to be understood. You'll notice how restless you are at first, how your thoughts scatter like startled birds, how you reach for distractions, how uneasy stillness feels. But stay there. Stay long enough to watch the chaos settle, because beneath that surface noise, there is clarity waiting. And when it comes, it won't shout. It will arrive like breath, soft, undeniable, and real. You begin to realize that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of truth. And in that truth, you remember the person you were before the world told you who to be. There's a sacredness to those moments before dawn, when the light hasn't yet entered the room and everything feels suspended between night and day. In that liminal space, you feel time slow down. You begin to see that life is not something happening to you. It is something rising within you. In that stillness, your priorities reorder themselves. The things you once chased so frantically start to lose their weight. The validation, the noise, the comparison, it all falls away. And what remains are the things that actually matter: peace, purpose, presence. But understand this: silence will test you. It will ask you to sit with your pain instead of numbing it. It will ask you to feel your regrets instead of burying them. It will ask you to stop performing and start becoming. And that's the hardest part, because becoming is brutal. It's not a clean, polished process. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's full of confrontation, but it's also the only path back to authenticity, to remembering what makes you you. When you learn to sit in silence, you learn to hear yourself think again. You rediscover the dreams that once felt impossible but never really died. You reconnect with the voice that says, I can do more than survive. I can create, I can build, I can begin again, and that realization changes everything. Because once you know what your soul sounds like, once you've met the voice beneath the noise, the world can no longer deceive you. You stop chasing distractions. You stop trying to please everyone. You stop living as a reaction to life and start living as its author. Silence teaches ownership of the inner world. It shows you that peace is not found in a place, a person, or a possession. It's built through the courage to face yourself without flinching. You start to crave it, that early morning solitude, not for escape, but for alignment. You realize that the most powerful thing you can do each morning is to listen, to stand still long enough to understand what your own soul is asking for. Because when you know what that voice wants, your actions become sharp, focused, directed. You stop wandering through days lost in noise. You start moving with purpose. That's what the great ones understand. They don't fear silence. They depend on it. It's where they build vision. It's where they make decisions not from fear, but from alignment. Before the world demands their attention, they demand truth from themselves. And here's what's beautiful. You don't need a perfect morning ritual to find this. You don't need candles, music, or a plan. You just need stillness. Even 5 quiet minutes where the only thing you hear is your own breathing. Because in that moment, you'll realize something profound. You are not as lost as you think. You are simply distracted, and silence, true silence, is how you find your way back. It's how you remember that the answers you've been searching for were never out there. They've always been inside, waiting for you to slow down enough to hear them. So tomorrow morning, when you sit in the dark before dawn, don't fill the silence. Don't rush it. Don't fear it. Let it speak. Let it speak. Let it show you who you are beneath the noise, beneath the performance, beneath the world's expectation. Because in that sacred stillness, when the world is asleep and only your breath remains, you'll find what you've been missing. The quiet, undeniable truth that everything you need to become who you were meant to be has always been inside you. That is the silence that speaks. There's a moment every morning, that thin, fragile space between sleep and awakening, where your entire life hangs in the balance. No alarms, no meetings, no expectations, just a decision. It's quiet, but it's not peaceful, it's war. The bed is warm, the air is cold, and your mind begins its familiar negotiation. Just 5 more minutes. You whisper it like a prayer, convincing yourself that rest is mercy, but it's not mercy, it's surrender. You see, the battle against the bed isn't about comfort. It's about control. It's the first test the day gives you, and it's one you must face alone. No one will see it. No one will cheer for you. But it's the most defining moment of your morning, because it's where you decide who's really in charge. Every time you rise when you said you would, you teach your mind to obey you. Every time you stay, you teach it to betray you. That's the truth most people never confront. You are training yourself every morning. One choice at a time, you are either building strength or building excuses. The battle begins in whispers. The bed tells you that you deserve rest, that it's too early, too cold, too soon. It tells you that no one will notice if you stay. But deep down, you know that's not true. You'll notice. You'll carry that decision with you all day. A faint heaviness in your chest, a quiet guilt in your reflection. Not because of the missed hour, but because of what it represents. Comfort is seductive. It makes you forget what discipline feels like. It convinces you that tomorrow is just as good as today. But comfort is a liar, one that trades your potential for temporary ease. And here's the brutal truth: the version of you that you dream of becoming, that person doesn't sleep through their calling. They rise. Not because it's easy, but because they refuse to be mastered by weakness. When you rise early, you are not simply waking up, you are reclaiming authority over your life. You are saying to the world, I move when I choose to, not when I'm forced to. That act, small as it seems, begins to rewire something within you. Because discipline isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with motivation or energy. It's quiet, it's cold, it's hard. It's the decision to move when comfort says no. Every morning is a duel between the man you've been and the man you're becoming, between the voice that says stay safe and the one that whispers rise. That's why so few win. Because this battle doesn't happen once, it happens every single day. You will lose some mornings. You will give in. You will fall back asleep and you'll hate yourself for it. But what matters is that you return to the fight, that you rise again the next day, not to chase perfection, but to rebuild control. This is the secret no one tells you about discipline. It's not about feeling ready, it's about feeling the resistance and rising anyway. Every successful person you admire has mastered this invisible war, not by magic, not by talent, but by consistency. They fought the same battle you fight now. The only difference, they stopped negotiating with weakness. Because when you stop arguing with your excuses, you free yourself from them. When you stop waiting for motivation, you start leading yourself. And that's when your mornings begin to transform. You stop waking up in reaction to life and start awakening to it. There's a sacred clarity in those early moments. When you stand in the dark, tired but awake, realizing that no one forced you here. You chose it. You showed up for yourself before the world asked you to. And that choice, that quiet rebellion, begins to change everything. You'll notice it first in small ways. Your focus sharpens, your confidence strengthens. You begin to move through the day with a quiet authority. Not loud, not proud, but steady. Because you know what you've already conquered before the world even opened its eyes. The discipline of rising early spills into every other part of your life. It shapes the way you work, the way you think, the way you treat your time. You begin to understand that every delay carries a cost, and every act of discipline carries freedom. And soon you start craving that freedom more than comfort. The bed no longer feels like safety. It feels like limitation. You start seeing comfort for what it is. The slow poison that keeps people trapped in the same life year after year, dreaming of change but never daring to rise for it. That's when you realize the battle against the bed was never about sleep. It was about identity. It was about choosing between the version of you that waits and the version that acts. When you win that battle, you begin to see yourself differently. You trust yourself again. You stop making promises you don't keep. You stop postponing your potential, and something powerful happens inside you, a quiet, steady confidence that doesn't come from achievements, but from alignment, from knowing that your word, your will, your discipline all stand on the same ground. Because discipline isn't built on motivation, it's built on integrity, on keeping your word to yourself when no one else is watching. That's what rising early represents, not a routine, but a resurrection. A daily reminder that you are stronger than your comfort, more capable than your fear, and more determined than your fatigue. The bed will always call your name. The warmth will always whisper reasons to stay. But every time you rise, you teach your mind that you are not here to obey weakness. You are here to master it. And over time, that mastery begins to define you. You walk differently. You think differently. You live differently because you've learned to win the hardest war, the one within. So tomorrow, when the alarm sounds and your body begs to rest, remember this moment. Remember that comfort has never built anything worth remembering. Remember that greatness is born in defiance, in the quiet, unseen rebellion of one simple act, to rise. Because every morning when you conquer the bed, you are not just waking up, you are breaking the chain that once held you back. You are declaring war on the version of you that settled. And you are proving one dawn at a time that the life you desire is not waiting for you. It's waiting for the man or woman who has the courage to get up and take it. There's a reason the wise move slowly in the morning, not out of laziness but reverence. Before they build, they look. Before they move, they understand. Before they act, they think. You see, most people wake up and fall straight into motion. 1,000 small reactions to 1,000 small demands. They rush to answer messages, to meet expectations, to chase what feels urgent. But urgency is not the purpose. And so by the time the sun is high, their energy is scattered, their day already stolen by noise. But those who lead, those who rise, they begin differently. They begin with reflection. Morning reflection is not a luxury. It's not indulgence. It's a necessity. It's the sacred ritual that separates those who drift through their days from those who design them. When you wake and sit in silence, when you give yourself even 10 minutes to think before the world speaks, you are reclaiming something priceless: your awareness. Awareness is the architect of greatness. It's the space where you take all the noise, the goals, the fears, the confusion, and you start to arrange them, like blueprints on a table, like a builder mapping the shape of a new world. You begin by asking simple but brutal questions. What do I want from this day? What deserves my energy? What am I doing that no longer serves me? Most people are afraid of those questions because they expose the truth. Reflection doesn't flatter you, it confronts you. It reminds you of how often you trade progress for distraction. It forces you to look at the gap between what you said you do and what you actually did. But here's the beauty: that confrontation is clarity, and clarity is freedom. When you reflect each morning, you're not just organizing your tasks, you're aligning your mind. You're shifting from reaction to intention. You stop letting the world decide your direction and start choosing it yourself. Imagine a builder who begins construction without a plan. Bricks may rise, walls may form, but the structure will crumble because there was no design. That's how most people live their days. They build without blueprints. They chase activity instead of progress. Morning reflection is where you draw your plans. It's where you visualize your day not as a list of obligations, but as a creation, something you're shaping deliberately. You start to see what matters. You see the distractions for what they are: thieves. You stop running in circles. You stop letting your emotions dictate your direction. And as this practice deepens, reflection becomes something more than planning. It becomes a dialogue with your higher self. You start to see patterns. You notice the excuses you repeat, the emotions that control you, the thoughts that sabotage you. And slowly, with each morning, you begin to dismantle them, brick by brick. There's power in looking inward before you look outward. When you begin your day by studying yourself, your mind, your motives, your reactions, you start mastering them. You stop being surprised by your weaknesses because you've already met them in the morning. That's what successful people understand. Mastery isn't about always being strong. It's about being self-aware enough to anticipate your own weakness and act anyway. And so in that quiet space before the day begins, you breathe. You think, you see. You let your thoughts settle like dust after a storm. You allow your mind to open, not to the chaos of the world, but to the clarity of purpose. It's not meditation in the spiritual sense. It's meditation in the strategic sense. You're training your focus. You're conditioning your thoughts to obey your goals. And in that practice, you begin to notice something remarkable: the difference between motion and progress. You realize that most of what you once called busy was really avoidance. You see how much energy you wasted reacting to life instead of directing it. Reflection strips away the unnecessary. It leaves you with what is essential. And when you move into the day with that kind of precision, calm, clear, deliberate, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Because now, every action has a purpose behind it. Every word, every choice, every hour serves a vision that you already defined when the world was still asleep. But reflection requires courage. It begins with thought. It begins with the deliberate act of choosing your direction before the day begins to pull you in 100 others. When you wake and ask yourself, what must I create today to move closer to who I must become? You are not just setting a goal. You are declaring authorship over your life. Because the truth is, no one drifts into greatness. No one stumbles into mastery. Every meaningful success in this world was first engineered in thought, drafted in silence, built in vision, executed in precision. Intent is the difference between a busy life and a meaningful one. You can fill every hour of your day with action, meetings, messages, obligations, and still end it empty. Because without intent, you are not living, you are reacting. You are letting the world decide what you should care about. But when you begin your morning by defining your direction, everything changes. Suddenly, your hours have purpose, your choices have weight, your effort has aim. The mind, when given intention, becomes a weapon. It cuts through noise, distraction, and uncertainty with the precision of clarity. That is why the most successful among us do not begin their day with movement. They begin with meaning. They don't ask, "What do I have to do?" They ask, "What must I become through what I do today?" There's a profound difference there, one that separates those who merely exist from those who evolve. You see, every day offers you two choices: to repeat or to refine. The difference lies in whether you act from intention or impulse. To live with intent is to live awake, to treat every decision as a brick in the structure of who you're becoming. To live without it is to sleepwalk, to move through days that blur into months, wondering where your time went and why nothing changed. But intent doesn't just happen. It must be cultivated, and the morning is where it's forged. Before the messages, before the obligations, before the noise, that's when you must sit with yourself and design the day ahead. Ask yourself, what is the single thing that would make today meaningful? What am I avoiding that must finally be faced? What can I build today in thought, in habit, in discipline that will outlive the day itself? These questions are not small. They are the blueprint of purpose. You must understand, success is not luck dressed in hard work. It's architecture. It's precision. It's 1,000 mornings of intent, stacked one on top of another until vision turns into reality. Intent is how you align your actions with your identity. Without it, you can achieve and still feel empty, because effort without direction is just exhaustion. The hour of intent is where you remind yourself why you began. It's where you reconnect with the vision of the person you promised to become. It's where you ensure that what you do next will not betray that vision. This is not about writing endless to-do lists. It's about defining a theme for the day, a singular focus that gives your energy meaning. It's about building consciously instead of drifting carelessly. When you move with intent, your work feels different. Even the smallest task gains weight. Even the quiet moments become strategic. You stop wasting energy on everything and start investing it in the few things that actually move you forward. And in time, this practice becomes more than a morning ritual. It becomes a philosophy. You begin to see how every great creation, every transformation, every victory you admire began as thought, as pure intent made visible through consistent action. That's why it's so powerful. Because the world will always test your discipline. It will always pull you toward distraction, toward busyness, toward what's easy. But when you begin your day anchored in intent, you cannot be moved. You walk through chaos with focus. You handle failure with grace. You adapt without losing direction. It's built in silence, in the empty hours where there's no audience, no validation, no recognition. It's built in the mornings when no one's watching, when you rise not because someone's waiting for you, but because you refuse to wait for yourself. That's what discipline really is, doing the work when the world has forgotten you. Because deep down, you know that the applause means nothing if it's not earned in the dark. Every early morning you've endured, every quiet victory you've won when no one else cared, they all collect beneath the surface, forming the foundation that holds everything visible. The truth is, people will see your success and call it luck. They'll see your peace and call it privilege. They'll see your confidence and think you were born with it. They'll never see the discipline, the daily invisible war you fought within. They'll never see the mornings where you doubted yourself but showed up anyway. The nights where you wanted to quit but didn't. The quiet sacrifices that no one clapped for. And that's okay, because success was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be a transformation. Real success doesn't need to be seen. It needs to be felt. It speaks not through noise, but through presence, through calmness, through the quiet authority of someone who has mastered themselves. That's the unseen reward. It's not the trophy on the shelf, it's the peace in your chest. It's not the recognition, it's the resilience. It's not what the world gives you, it's what you've become when no one is giving you anything at all. Every day you choose discipline over distraction, you are building something sacred, a foundation so deep, so strong, that no failure can collapse it. That foundation doesn't show itself in your routine. It shows itself in how you walk through life. You move differently when you've built yourself in private. You speak differently. You think differently. You don't need to prove yourself anymore because your life has already become proof. And here's the quiet truth. The world will feel it. It may not know why, but it will. It will feel it in your confidence when pressure rises. It will feel it in your clarity when others crumble. It will feel it in your peace, that rare calm that only belongs to those who have paid their price in silence. That's what makes unseen discipline so powerful. It doesn't ask for attention. It commands respect without saying a word, because you've done the work that others avoid. You've endured the hours that others sleep through. You've faced yourself in ways the world never will. And that's why you'll always carry something most people don't. Depth. There's a strength that only comes from consistency. There's a confidence that only comes from showing up again and again when no one is watching. And there's a peace that only comes from knowing you've earned your own respect. The unseen reward is not about what you get. It's about who you become. It's about the version of you that no longer needs applause to feel worthy. Because applause fades, fame fades, validation fades. But discipline, real, daily unseen discipline, builds something permanent. It builds character. It builds integrity. It builds a life that doesn't crumble when the noise stops. There's a moment, after years of silent work, when you begin to realize that you no longer chase recognition. You've outgrown it. You don't crave eyes on you anymore because you've learned to find peace in progress, not praise. That's when you know you've crossed into something greater, mastery. Not mastery of a skill, but mastery of self. Because true mastery doesn't happen when you've conquered the world. It happens when you've conquered the need for the world to notice. The ones who rise quietly are the ones who last. Because their strength isn't borrowed from validation. It's built from discipline, and the world, though it may never see the early hours, will always feel the difference. So when no one claps for you, keep building. When no one notices your effort, keep going. When no one understands your silence, honor it. Because the work you do unseen is the work that changes everything. It's the part of success that can't be faked, copied, or rushed. You may not see the reward today, but one day, when you walk into a room and your presence speaks louder than words, when people feel your peace without you saying a thing, you'll know. You'll know it came from those quiet mornings, those lonely hours, those small unseen victories. You'll realize that what you were building all along wasn't just success. It was substance. The world may never see the hours that made you, but it will always feel the person they forged. And that is the unseen reward. To live a life that doesn't need to be witnessed to be real. To know you've built something invisible that lasts forever. There's a moment just before dawn, when the night hesitates, when the air still carries the weight of dreams and the world feels suspended between who it was and who it's about to become. That moment is your mirror. It asks you a single question. Will you rise or will you repeat? Every morning, life gives you that same choice. Not in grand speeches or thunderous revelation, but in quiet, ordinary moments. The alarm clock, the hesitation, the breath before you move, the decision that defines everything that follows. You see, most people think destiny is something waiting for them in the distance. A calling, a chance, a stroke of luck. But destiny isn't found. It's formed. It's carved out of mornings like this, one small act of discipline, one quiet victory at a time. Before the sun touches the horizon, before the world remembers your name, that's where your future begins. Because every day you wake, you are reborn. The person you were yesterday no longer exists, except in memory and habit. And the person you will become depends entirely on what you do in the hours when no one's watching. That's why mornings matter. They're not just the start of a day, they're the rehearsal for the life you're building. You either repeat what you've always done, or you rise into something greater. And rising doesn't always mean movement. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes it's the decision to think differently, to stop hiding behind comfort, to stop waiting for permission. It's the moment you finally realize that no one is coming to change your life. It's you. It has always been you. The dawn of becoming isn't loud. It doesn't come with lightning or applause. It begins in silence, the silence of decision, the whisper of responsibility that says, "Today, I create." When you rise before 6 a.m., you are not just getting up. You are meeting the version of yourself that few ever meet. The focused self, the disciplined self, the builder, the thinker, the leader that only emerges when the world is still asleep. That's the self that builds empires. That's the self that rewrites stories. That's the self that no one can give you. Because you earn it through repetition, through effort, through consistency. Every morning you are handed a blank canvas, and most people throw paint on it without thought, reacting to noise, reacting to emotion, reacting to life. But the ones who rise early, the ones who approach the day with purpose, they paint deliberately, stroke by stroke, choice by choice. They understand that destiny isn't waiting somewhere down the line. It's unfolding right now, in these quiet, unseen hours. Every breath you take before sunrise is an invitation to step closer to who you're meant to be, to shed the weight of yesterday's hesitation, to begin again, sharper, clearer, more certain. But becoming is not gentle, it will test you. Some mornings will feel heavy. You'll wake tired, uninspired, even broken. And still, the dawn will call your name. That's the test. That's where it begins. Not when it's easy, but when it isn't. Because growth never asks for comfort, it asks for courage. And each time you choose courage, each time you rise when you could have rested, you reinforce a truth that reshapes your life. You are not your feelings, you are your decisions. You start to realize that your future is not determined by what you want, but by what you're willing to rise for. Every morning is a chance to prove to yourself that you're not the same as you were yesterday, that you are evolving even when no one else notices. And that is the essence of becoming. Not transformation through moments of glory, but through the quiet daily act of showing up. The sun rises slowly. It doesn't rush. It doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives, consistent, certain, inevitable. That's how you must rise. You don't need to sprint into success. You just need to keep showing up before the world does, to build in the dark, to trust the process. To let your discipline carry you where motivation never could. Because one day, when the noise of life settles and you look back, you'll realize that every victory, every opportunity, every ounce of peace came from the same place, those early unseen hours when you chose to rise. That's the dawn of becoming. It's not about what time you wake, it's about why you wake. It's about deciding that every sunrise is a sacred appointment between you and the life you're building. You meet it with gratitude, with focus, with hunger. Not because anyone's watching, but because you know that this is where destiny is written. So tomorrow, when the sky is still dark and the world still sleeps, remember this: you're not just waking up, you're awakening. You're stepping into the person your future needs you to be. And one day that future will thank you, not for your dreams, but for your discipline. Because before 6 a.m., you're not just starting another day, you're shaping a destiny. And that is the dawn of becoming.